What is up, down, and sideways, all you stunned individuals? It is another FPF League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you, fine and feathered folks, for a little bit of power ranking action. Week 2/3. Time to finally dive into some of these domestic rankings. You know, I think two best of threes is enough to fully grade a team's performance, right?
Yeah, I mean, only when we're looking really at the regional aspect of it. I think it's fair to do at this point because, again, some of these regions, some of these matches have had very significant shifts in where the power has been expected to be. So I think it's a good early season check-in in this regard after our first stand event and heading towards our mid-season invitational.
And we begin in the, you call it mess, chaos, alternate timeline dimension that is the LCK. And Mark, if I told you at the start of the split, you do an LCK little ranking and both GenG and T1 would be outside of the top three, I don't think your response to me would be very forgiving. But here we are.
I'd be trying to understand what changed, what butterfly effect down the line led us to this divergent timeline where we have KT Roaster at the very top of the LCK power rankings. Not only KT Roaster at the top, but we've got a top three of KT, Hanwha Life, and D plus Kia, meaning that's no GenG, no T1 in the top three of the LCK. And this isn't just some shock value ranking at this point or going, KT's beating up on, the bros and everybody that stinks in the LCK. No, this is a KT that has wins against GenG and T1. This is D plus Kia that's got to win against GenG. And yes, maybe Hanwha Life doesn't have the head-to-head against T1. I think we can all agree for sure, at least I know you'd agree with me on this, that Hanwha Life has certainly had more teeth to them, looked stronger, more competent in at least their most recent series in comparison to either of T1 or GenG. It's a very different time to start out this split two in the LCK.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Hanwha, their two series after the loss to T1, and T1's two series after the win against Hanwha, and they have completely split trajectories at that point. I know T1 beat the DN Supers 2-0. Congrats, guys. If we're clamoring onto that to be positive, then we're already in trouble. But it's still very early. Sure, T1 and GenG are going to hop back into the top three, most likely. We just kind of come to expect a D plus collapse as we get closer to playoffs. But beating GenG is a rarity, and I'd have to look at the numbers, but I'm pretty sure it's been since like 2022 that we have had GenG outside the top three of a ranking like this.
Well, it's been a long time since we've had D plus Kia be able to pull off an upset against GenG.
Yeah,
like
5
that,
years
never
or something,
mind.
right?
2-0 fashion of that upset situation. So yes, this is one of those ones where, again, it's very real right now. Is it going to be real in 2 or 3 weeks time is going to be the real question in the LCK. Can it last? Can it maintain for these squads, and how you hold back a squad like GenG and T1? Because let's be real here, even if they are in reality in this position on the power rankings right now, we all know that is not the true indication of what these rosters are capable of. So it's only a matter of time until they do figure it out, until they do show their force out on against everybody else. Can you maintain a position at the top of the LCK when that wave, when that storm does come from GenG and T1?
I think maybe the more surprising part of this, listen, we've had upsets like this happen all the time in the regular season, but the KT and D plus ones, like, these were dominant. This wasn't like, oh man, miracle team fight, they steal a win away. KT was nearly perfect gaming T1 in some of their matchups, and D plus, I mean, even 2-0ing is absolute lunacy, but like, they did it in relatively convincing fashion. The GenG side, I know you could say, well, maybe they're just not as motivated. They've played so many games, they've won so much, but I'm wondering, is there a ruler angle here? Because we've been seeing the whole tax thing now, not just affecting League of Legends. I've seen stuff about other esports, people having their military exemption or travel things revoked because the government in South Korea is trying to kind of rejig what it is to have this exemption in esports, and Ruler is the poster boy case for this. I'm hard pressed not to believe there's not a trickle down effect to the environment of GenG right now.
Well, you'd be crazy to tell me that this doesn't have an effect on Ruler individually in that regard. And then, given how important, what a status figure he is for the GenG organization at this point, never mind the previous history of him with that group type of thing, all that combined, yeah, I easily can see a route where that is having some type of effect, some hangover, dark cloud, whatever it is, it's causing some type of negativity within GenG. And I think that is a very real thing that isn't going to go away anytime soon or really get, this miracle happy ending resolved or type of thing. I don't think both of us envision that given what we have heard. So right now, it is a bit of an alarm for GenG in that regard when you are looking at that type of situation on the outside looking in, which causes more concern than on the T1 angle. You look at it and you go, well, we've had some suspect performances to start out the split from guys like Owner, who had been extremely consistent, as well as Kyria down in the bottom lane. We haven't quite seen him struggle to this type of degree in his career just yet. So a lot of, very iffy things happening. But if you're going to take one of these squads that's outside the top 5 and their situation right now, yeah, just not having anything to do with the outside noise. And that is a lot of outside noise, never mind in the global community, especially in the Korean community right now for GenG.
The other big, well, relatively big surprise on this list is, of course, BNK at 1-3 and 7 on this spot. They had a pretty abysmal first couple of series, but they've started to turn things around. Even with the Hanwha series that they lost, they took a game and they were in the lead in that third game. But seeing Daystar suit up for their series win against DN Supers, and he actually looked pretty good, is definitely something to monitor as the year of Vikla takes maybe a quick pause in that way.
Taking a side tour, maybe a trip to the pit stop, something like that in this situation. It works for BNK, and that's, something to check in on. But this is one of those squads that, again, exceeded expectations last time around. And when now you have a different, environment in the LCK where T1 and GenG aren't at their expected spots and someone else has taken them and risen up, is there still room for you? Are there still wins within the schedule that you're able to take away in this situation when not only is it, obviously GenG and T1 that are looking to jump back into that top picture, but you've got the guys that are in that top picture to deal with that have had the form to get themselves there. BNK finding themselves in a more difficult task this time around in the LCK.
And the theme of this list is both, these top dogs not quite looking like themselves, but the middle pack leveling up when you talk about D plus KT. So BNK, yeah, they have a long road to get back, but we've seen the positive signs for them to slowly grow and get back there. So not pressing the panic button on any of these teams just quite yet. Still not pressing the panic button on most squads in the LEC because it's still very early on. But much like the LCK one, surprise squads hanging out at the tippity top of this ranking. If you've watched any of the recent videos, we're high on Team Vitality, and it was just another 2-0 weekend. They handle business against G2. They've played more games than anybody else in Europe, so there's more to go off of, and they've delivered time and time again here early in spring.
There's no question, I think, regardless of how you want to evaluate it and whatnot, Vitality has to be the number 1 team in the power rankings for the LEC based off of, again, as you said, you laid it out, what they have done right now so far. No one else has been able to achieve that. And yes, part of that is because, well, no one else gets the exact scheduling that you do get, but you can only take care of what is in front of you. And that is exactly what Vitality has done. And they've done so with flying colors in so many regards. And so one of the ones where it really is just going to be a test of, is it able to stay at this type of level? Are you able to maintain this as the scheduling gets a little bit more sparse, gets not as intense? Can you keep that same level of fire and, consistency in your gameplay? Which, again, knowing the careers of guys like Humanoid, like Carzzy, it'd be understandable to be doubtful, to be on the the other side of the coin here, looking on Vitality. But for me, right now, they've done so much in what is available to them in the LEC that you cannot ignore them as that number 1 team.
And Obviously, we don't have any scrim data or numbers from these teams, but with scarce stage games coming over the next couple of weeks, I don't have a ton of confidence in Garzi, Humanoid, and the boys, staying locked in when they're primarily doing scrimming. So hopefully they can maintain this level, as the only team that's beaten them is Carmine Corp in that dramatic way back in week 1 matchup. And KC, despite only playing 2 series, they dominated their 1 matchup this weekend and still look like obviously a top tier squad and might be the team to beat once we get more games on the Rift for them. And I think quickly Busio has left a massive gap between him and every other support in Europe.
And we were very confident in this being a possibility heading into this split. And it just was one of these ones where you knew whether it was going to be about him individually, whether it was going to be about the synergy with Khalees, or just everything as far as that goes with making this type of change in your life or career, that it was going to take a bit of time. But the skill was there, and it was going to be a real factor at some point. And we've seen that more than enough times, I think, in this split to say that I think you're getting the real deal Busio at this point. I think split 1 was, a little bit here and there. Now you're getting the full experience, the full treatment, and it is absolutely one of these difference makers that has pushed Carmine Corp into that, again, really, separating themselves from that middle pack of the LEC and solidifying themselves as a top contender.
Going to be much easier to do these when we have these home arena venues where
Yes.
KC and MCOY are playing like 3 games over a weekend, so that we have more to look at. Because when you kind of look at this middle outside of the top 2 in the LEC, you're going, if you look primarily at numbers, Giant X 4-0, shouldn't they be ahead of Navi, MCOY, G2? They're way better than them. Well, Giant X has beaten Fnatic, Team Heretics, SK, and Shifters. Literally the bottom 4 teams in the LEC. They even struggled a bit, had a 7k deficit against Shifters. But I will say Jackie's has had a fantastic start so far, and Giant X, they look good. It's just not been against good competition. So even a 1-2 G2, can you really put them ahead of them?
No, it's a tough decision type of one. It's, again, as you said, it is one of those ones where you have to give them the credit for what you have done, right? What is available to you and in your scheduling and everything else. Have you taken care of your tasks? Yes, they have. And so that is absolutely where you do get that bump. But those tasks have been like the beginner quest tasks of the tutorial, right? It's the look to your left, look to your right, move forward, jump up and down, the very beginning basics. That's how it feels for Giant X so far. And it's very much so like we talked about with KT Rolster in the LCK, and saying, it's the opposite situation at this point, where they only have had those lower level teams, and it's one where, again, even the track record before it doesn't lead you to believe in them against those next tiers up, against the Carmine Corps, against the Vitalities that we talked about already. So very much so one of these situations where good on Giant X and still going to be keeping an eye on it. But again, if you're going over the moon with this type of one, I think you're buying a little bit too much into what has been done so far.
Yeah, and that's not to say that MCOY G2 have definitely had their suspect shaky moments. Navi a little bit less so. That's why they're in that 3 spot. But really outside of the top 2, there's been shaky moments for most of the squads in Europe. And even when you look at that bottom 4, I'm actually feeling a little better about SK Gaming than I thought I would at any point during the split. And they're really the only team now, it seems to change week to week, that I think could maybe push into that 6th spot. There'd have to be some falling apart moments for some of these squads. But if Leader can just maybe stop dying so much, I do feel like Yopa, we saw the absolute potential this young prospect has, and Wonder has held his own in the top lane time and time again. If they just get some consistency out of that little mid lane, maybe they'll be okay.
I apologize for being the rain cloud here, because I don't see it with SK at all. I think this is still one of those ones where, yes, you can give the positive over to Yopa and what's been going on. And even Leader, yes, despite the deaths and how things have gone, I think he's had more of a contribution, more of at least a positive one this split around compared to last split. I still do not see a room for them in the LEC to climb up any positions, really, to take anybody out of one of these spots. I don't see that improvement. I don't see that consistency from this squad. I'm lost on this project, brother. I don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, when you do pick one of these other 6 teams ahead to drop out and SK maybe take it, you're going, well, Giant X would be the maybe easiest one. But we just said they're 4-0, so there's no chance SK's gaining them. So that's, you'd have to have disaster from G2, MKOI, Navi. Remember, if G2 fall to 7 again, like they did last split, ain't even making playoffs.
Well, we can't be having that. Yes, that I think is the bare minimum in the LEC, but at the very least, I think the G2 faithful and the rest of the LEC crowd could very much put that expectation on G2 to at the very least not be 7th, to be 1 position better than you were last time around.
It'd be one of the most insane off seasons of all time if that happened. And don't think that that's going to be happening. That's why G2, even at 1 and 2, has a lot of runway and confidence that we expect them to bounce back and obviously probably run all the playoffs, at least get to finals. The least crazy all over the place rankings on this day has got to be the LCS, which maybe it's just because it's less interesting. Sorry, North America. Maybe it's because they've played less games. But Cloud9 at the top of the rankings is like the least surprising top squad on any of these lists. And that's even with them being bad at America's Cup, getting beaten by Lion in the spring or the lock-in tournament. They got the revenge against them and have looked pretty good so far, even though they needed 3 games against Sentinels. I might even take Team Liquid in the 1 spot if you could convince me.
You could, I think, make an argument for Team Liquid. You'd have to be very, very convincing in how you went about it and talked about and upping players like Morgan and what contributions they're going to make in the next couple of games type of thing. But I'm leaning more so towards what Cloud9 has done this split so far. It's been enough, and yes, it is maybe not the highest degree or level or vote of confidence that you could give for the LCS, but it still is them at the top, I think, unquestioned to me, compared to where you are looking at, again, a Team Liquid where you have to really stretch, I think, a couple argument points to put them above.
And, they had Shopify pushed back, and Shopify, in the 5th spot is a lot higher than they were at any point last split. But Team Liquid, we're at least seeing Morgan, as you mentioned, has been much better. You heard some quotes from Jose Diodo saying he's never played with a guy who's been so dominant in the laning phase. And, well, Jose, this is probably the best team he's ever played on by far in terms of supporting cast, so that checks out. But the potential is slowly being pulled and reached for this Team Liquid squad. I think definitely quicker than we saw in Split 1. And now we have, I think, 3 legitimate teams that can vie for that main title status. Lion has not looked as good as they even did at first stand, needing 3 games against Dig and then losing to Cloud9.
It's one of those situations where I think you'd like still more from Cloud9, and then even further, just going that next step back, you look at Team Liquid and you go, okay, things are starting to round more so into how you envisioned it. You're getting more of a contribution from Morgan. You're still waiting on maybe the full synergy and contributions from Quid in the mid lane that you brought in. And even Yon, I think, it's still, as the returning member, you are waiting on that real firepower and return to form. But then you step back and you look at Leon, and again, another squad that hasn't quite been able to give you as much as you believe they are capable of or showcasing. And that is one of those situations where it leaves you feeling kind of, again, very meh about the LCS at this point. I think that goes along with where we have seen not a lot of movement or real drastic changes within the power rankings in comparison to how things have gone and played out in the LCK and the LEC.
It's a classic case of, would you rather have this one dominant force that's destroying everybody and you can maybe feel confident in that one team? Or do you have 3, maybe even 4 teams, if you want to throw FlyQuest in and be positive, that you're like, yeah, pretty good. It's pretty good. At least we got a few teams you could feel pretty good about. Not great, but pretty good.
And I'll accept that positivity about FlyQuest, because this has been a relatively good, strong start to this split for them, rebounding after kind of running out of steam, running into a wall, and running into the inexperience problems that this roster was going to have regardless of the point of the season. I think you are seeing a little bit of that spark back, a little bit of that bounce off the mat type of energy from this team and from the young guns, and that's showing out on Summoner's Rift. And one of those things where, again, in an environment of the LCS where no one really is going to look like they're going to run away with things at this point, this is going to be wide open, and you are going to have some of these tough matches with these top teams. Very much looking forward to seeing what FlyQuest can do this time around.
And we've been hyping up the bot lane, rightfully so. You know, they kind of gapped beyond and core JJ in that first series and really destroyed their series against Disguise. But how about Griffin going through the hyperbolic time chamber, having to play against Blabber and Inspired in so many of his first series in the LCS, to now when he matches up against a fellow rookie young guy in Kryra, you see the growth from Griffin already after a split. And he's an integral piece to this, not just because obviously jungle is very important, but you've seen the guy on comms, you've seen what kind of personality he has, and when he's winning and performing well individually, FlyQuest stocks go way up.
Yeah, FlyQuest can be one of these teams that operates around the lower end or middle tier of this LCS under, a normal circumstance type of thing. If you are getting a Griffin who is that X factor player that he is capable of being and is developing through, that is absolutely that tier where it throws you into that top tier conversation. And that's been one of the factors so far to start out this split too. So very, very deserved for FlyQuest to find themselves in this position. And I will very much so include them in a top 4 as opposed to separating it out as a top 3 in the LCS.
And if you look at the bottom 4, who's got the most potential to kind of jump up and contest the top 4? Is Shopify just the easy answer?
I think Shopify is the easiest answer, depending on how much of your confidence in them was blown this past weekend. That's really kind of the indication for me, because otherwise I think you could then maybe be sold on Sentinels and some of the fight and pushback that you see or whatever. But other than that, I think it really does be one of these situations where, okay, you have 4, and that's including FlyQuest, and then you've got Shopify here. And then it really kind of cuts out unless you're seeing or really taking those positive angles on these bottom end teams.
Yeah, you're kind of cutting the league in half with FlyQuest as that gatekeeper bubble squad to see if you're ready to ascend into that top 3. But it's only going to get spicier from here in North America and across the globe. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you, beautiful people. Thanks for hanging out. We will catch you on that flippity flip.